And I'm going to share my screen. Okay. And oop, this has to move out of the way. Sorry, one moment. Why is that all the way over there? Sorry, one moment. Slideshow. Play. Okay, perfect. So this is one of a number of presentations on nutrition, and today is all about protein. And for those of you that have not seen the other ones, you can look in your documents section and you can find other ones that we've done in the past, and so you can take a peek at those. So protein, it's kind of an important one. I mean, they're all important, but there's so many misconceptions about protein. Obviously, all sorts of types of food lead to protein. When you think of protein, you can think of any one of a number of these things. And everybody loves protein, right? That's why I put that little halo over it, because it seems like you can't get enough. And everything good has protein. It's the building block of all organs, muscles, enzymes. So a protein is made out of amino acids, and there are 20 amino acids, and 9 of them are essential. So we can't make 9 amino acids. We have to get them from the diet. So it's super important that we get protein in our diet. We cannot make it, so that's really critical. And I just want to go through some of the misconceptions here. So obviously I already kind of gave it away. True or false? You have to eat animal products to get protein. You guys are welcome to put something in the chat, but what we're going to do is just continue moving forward. And the answer for this is false. You do not have to eat animal products to get protein. There is protein in every single thing. If you think about it, anything that has DNA has protein. And everything has DNA. So even bananas, apples, fruit, everything has it. It's made out of amino acids. Now, some things have more than others. And so, that kind of lets us know what we want to focus on if we're trying to increase our protein intake. But even if you're having apples, you're still having protein. So this is a good one. So which has the most protein? 100, if we're comparing 100 calories, beef, broccoli, spinach, or beans?
Beans.
All right, well, let's see what the answer is. Oh, go on. Move on. And it is spinach. So 100 calories of spinach gives you 12 grams of protein. If you look at steak, it's only 10 grams of protein per 100 calories. If you think about what's inside all the other foods, like for example, with beef, you have a lot of fat. So it actually minimizes the amount of protein you get per calorie. So Popeye was right. He had it right all along. And if you compare a serving of, for example, lentils versus beef, you can see that, now granted it's more, right? It's 400 grams compared to 100 grams, but you can get plenty of protein without having to have meat. Next, some plant sources of protein do not contain all essential amino acids. True or false?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody?
True.
Okay, it's false. Turns out everything has everything. So if you look at the schematic on the right, it's all 20 amino acids. And then if you look across on the left, you'll see all the different types of foods. And then you look at the scatter plot or whatever that is, and you see that everything has everything. It's just that some foods have less proportion of one type of amino acid compared to another. And so there is this misconception that if you only eat plant foods, and I'm not saying that you should only eat plant foods, but I'm just saying that there's a misconception that if you only eat plant foods, then you will not get all the important amino acids, and that's actually not true. A lot of times people will blend like rice and beans or corn and beans, if you've ever heard of this. So the essential amino acids, the 9 essential amino acids that we cannot make, that we have to eat, are the ones in the middle. And so grains tend to be a little bit more rich on the top 7, and beans and legumes more on the bottom 8. And when you combine them together, you have plenty of all the amino acids that you need. So you can get a complete protein rich source of food just from plants. So you do not have to eat meat in order to get that. Now, the next question is, how much do we actually need? So the recommended daily allowance is for a sedentary adult, which I hope we all are not, would be 0.8 grams per kilogram. So that would mean if you're 140 pounds, only 50 grams per day. Now, I would like to say that we're more in the athletic range, or at least we're trying to be, right? So as far as trying to be as healthy as possible. So that's more, that's basically double, because to be athletic, you need, you have more muscle mass. You want to have more muscle mass as you're exercising, etc. And so that's 1.6 grams per kilo. So if you're 140 pounds, that would make it about 100 grams of protein. How much do we get? So interestingly, a lot of people in the US are sedentary. If you look at how much protein the average person gets, it's actually almost twice the RDA. So it's not like we're protein deficient here in the United States. And why is it that, everybody loves protein? Well, this graph, there are tons and tons of studies that show that if you restrict, so either low carbohydrate or low fat, this compared low carb and low fat, you actually lose weight no matter what. So if you restrict food, you will lose weight. But what they have found is that the blue, which is the low carb, meaning higher protein, higher fat, you tend to lose more. And so because of this, it's like everybody decides that let's add protein in everything, water, protein water, muscle milk, protein porridge, protein granola, protein Cheerios. It's like protein, protein, protein. And, the concept is potentially an okay one, except that all of these things are highly processed foods, right? So that's always kind of something that we worry about, because processed foods, ideally you'd want to eat food from the source. And here's the other issue, is that protein is not able to be stored. These are my kids, by the way, when they were younger. So protein cannot be stored. So what does that mean? that means that you can't try to make up for a period of not having protein by eating a giant protein meal. Because when you have excess protein in any one sitting, the nitrogen, the ammonia group, the nitrogen part of the protein gets cleaved off and gets removed out your urine through your kidneys, and it is converted to carbohydrate and stored as fat. So if you have, for example, a giant steak, one of those huge pieces of steak, thinking that that's going to increase your muscle mass, think again, because first of all, you're adding a ton of fat because of what else is packaged with that protein, and any excess protein, which will be a lot of it, is going to be converted to carbohydrate and stored as fat. So for protein, timing is everything. It's actually important to space it out. This study looked at timing and distribution of protein ingestion, and they looked at myofibrillar protein synthesis, or muscular protein synthesis. Myofibrils are muscle fibers. So first of all, what they did was they, let me go to this. I lost the slide. So what they did was they had a bolus versus an intermediate versus a pulse dosing. So the bolus was 40 grams that were spaced out twice a day. The intermediate was 20 grams spaced out 4 times a day, and the pulse was 10 grams spaced out 8 times a day. So one thing that was very interesting here, if you look at this graph, this is plasma insulin concentration. So insulin isn't only stimulated when we have a carbohydrate load. It also gets stimulated with this protein load. And interestingly, you wonder whether part of it might be because of the fact that the ammonia, the nitrogen part is cleaved off and the rest remains as a carbohydrate. But if you look at insulin, so the bolus really significantly stimulates insulin, which the intermediate and pulse don't do as much. So they don't do it as statistically significantly. And that's important because huge insulin surges make you less insulin sensitive, which leads to problems down the road. And so when they actually looked at the results of this study, the rate of myofibrillar synthesis, so the muscle synthesis, was best with 20 grams of protein split up 4 times a day, as opposed to 2 big boluses or even pulsed throughout. So this was a very interesting study. So basically, you do want to space out your protein intake. Eating more doesn't give you more benefits. It maxes out at 20 to 40 grams per meal. It circulates for up to 6 hours, and then after that, you get muscle breakdown unless you eat again. And 20 grams of protein is not that much. So, here's what it looks like in terms of beans, or look at that, mushrooms. Did you know the mushrooms have protein? I mean, everything has protein, right? So edamame or your chickpeas, this is what that looks like. So if you have a very varied diet with lots of diversity, you are quite likely to get the amount of protein that you need. So when we look at the type of macronutrient composition, this was over 300,000 patients that were followed for 5 years. What they found was that if your protein percentage is kind of the highest, and then we're talking equal calories now, equal calories, but you're taking in really high protein, you are much more likely to become overweight or obese.
Mm.
So in other words, eating more protein as a percentage will give you more mass, which is actually something that some people want, right? So if you're trying to build muscle and you're trying to gain weight, having an increased protein percentage will get you there. So if we've talked about BMIs before, and this is the height. When you look at height versus weight, that will give you the same BMI. So these two people have the same height, the same weight, the same BMI, but clearly you can see that there is a difference in the health of each one, right? So you have a muscular person versus someone with visceral adiposity, obesity around the middle. That is a very different body composition change. So when people think, oh, I will eat a lot of protein and I will go from this before to this after, yes, that will happen. However, you actually have to exercise in order to do that. And so what ends up happening is people tend to, eat a lot of protein, hoping that they'll get muscular, but if then they're not exercising, then they just become obese. So that's something super important to keep in mind. And the other thing to keep in mind is, what is our long-term health? Weight is clearly important, but the source of protein matters. And so let's look at this study. People were followed for over 30 years in this study, and they found that if you replace animal protein sources with plant protein, various types, you have a significant reduction in mortality. And when you look at this, the biggest culprits are the red meat and the egg. So trying to reduce some of the red meat and reduce some of the egg, and replace it with plant protein will give you long-term beneficial effects. Now, why is that? Well, maybe it's the fact that red meat comes packaged along with saturated fat, which has been shown to increase cardiovascular risk. So that's, a possibility. What about fish and seafood? So here they followed over 200,000 patients over almost 12 years. And they found that fish actually is healthful. The more fish you eat, the lower likelihood you are to have coronary heart disease, die from coronary heart disease. So in that sense, fish is actually really good. And what is fish packaged with? So fish protein is packaged with omega-3 fatty acids. So if you were part of the fats conversation the last time that we spoke, it's in your documents, so you can look it up. You'll see that EPA, so eicosapentaenoic acid, and DHA, these are omega-3 fatty acids. They are anti-inflammatory. So the type of protein matters. So fish helps decrease risk over time. And then this one is a risk of coronary heart disease in women. They followed for 26 years, over 80,000 patients. And again, they found that red meat really kind of was a little bit of a culprit. If you replace red meat with poultry, fish, nuts, or beans, your risk of dying is lower. And last study that I'm going to go through with you guys is this vegetarian dietary patterns and mortality. And they followed people for almost 5 years, 73,000 patients. And I want you to take a look at this slide. Basically, so the type of death by all cause, ischemic heart disease, et cetera, it's up on the top. Those are the three, the multiple columns. Non-vegetarian is basically like the reference range. And if you look at all these other types of sort of a vegetarian type of pattern, meaning what's interesting is it doesn't mean you have to be only vegetarian. There are some like vegan, lacto-ovo, but pescatarian is in there, and semi-vegetarian. So basically saying, you know, you're eating a lot of plants, whatever it is, as long as you're eating a lot of plants, you have a lower risk of heart disease. And in this case, actually, the pescatarian did better than any of the other groups, especially ischemic heart disease. If you look at the 0.65, that's significantly lower than any of the other groups. So, so the source of protein matters. My favorite sources, I know a lot of people are really into powders, and sometimes, you know, those can be helpful if you're, you know, if you've gone for a workout and you want to eat something and you're like, oh, I'm rushing around. But for me, I would much rather grab a handful of nuts and seeds than make some like a protein shake. I just don't love the taste of protein shakes. But other protein sources that I love: salmon. I love soy. Soy comes packed with fiber and also those phytoestrogens that decrease risk of breast cancer and ovarian cancer. And I love spinach, lentils, lentil pasta. I'm already mentioned, I'm a huge nut and seed lover. I think that if you guys keep those around, you know, they're nice because you can keep them in your car, you can keep them in your bags, you know, wherever you are, you can have some nuts and seeds. If you start to get hungry, you know, grab a little handful. And I like ground turkey and chicken breast as well. Also, the other fish that I like are the little minnows. That's a
anchovies.
thing, like anchovies. Yeah, I like minnows. I cook in a traditional Greek way, you know, a little pan fried, but that's my personal. These are my personal favorites. So next I'm going to share a recipe. I'm going to show you how I make it, and it's delicious and it's super, super quick. So I hope you guys enjoy it. And here it is. We'll be making one of my favorite concoctions. Chop up the garlic. Here's an easy way to smash them and get the topping, excuse me, off. Topping. Just like that. Smash. And peel, just like so. Once you've peeled the garlic, chop it up into pieces. Put the garlic in the pan. Some olive oil. I'm very generous with the olive oil. And also add some cherry tomatoes. And salt, sea salt. Garlic powder. Some turmeric. For its anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties, and some black pepper, which potentiates the effects of the turmeric. Get this started cooking under medium heat. Stir it up. It's going to start sizzling soon. The reason why I put the cherry tomatoes in there with the garlic is that the garlic can turn black too quickly. So you don't want to do that. So I like the cherry tomatoes in there with the garlic so that they start to blister while the garlic is cooking. Chop up a portobello mushroom. Mushrooms are so good for you. Such great fiber. In the meantime, everything is starting to cook nicely and sizzle. Now the cherry tomatoes are going to start popping soon, so I'm going to put the cover on. Otherwise, I'm going to get a mess. So cover this for a few minutes and let them do their thing. This is what it looks like as it's cooking, and every once in a while, I'm going to shake it a little bit to make sure that the garlic doesn't burn. And then what we're going to add next is some tempeh. This is the type I like. It's organic, 18 grams of protein per serving. This has 2.5 servings in it, and I'm only going to use half the package. So that means that it will be around 22 grams of protein just with the tempeh alone, besides all the other stuff that I'm adding. So plenty of protein. Once the tomatoes have blistered, oh, this isn't too hot. You can see what that looks like. I crumple up the tempeh. Comes out as a block. You just crumple it. And you can see it's just fermented soybeans. You can see the soybeans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mix that all up. Can you see the beautiful yellow of the turmeric? And that's antioxidant power right there. Next, I add the mushrooms. And get that all stirred up. I wish you guys can smell the aroma. It is so delicious smelling. All right, next we add the spinach. And the funny thing about spinach is that you add a ton and it cooks down to nothing. So I add some, mix it in. it just wilts down to nothing. And then that's why I add more. This is almost an entire 16-ounce package. And keep mixing until it wilts down. See, it's all that spinach is nicely in here now. And I make 2 little holes for my eggs. And you don't have to have eggs. You can have this by itself. You can put it over some edamame pasta, for example. All right, I also love everything but the bagel seasoning, so I'm gonna add a little bit there, add a little bit there. And then I put the cover back on, and basically I am poaching the eggs. All right, in about a minute, I'm just gonna show you what it looks like. I'm gonna turn the heat off now and let it sit for another 30 seconds. All right, it's all done. It's that simple. I eat half of that.
Lovely.
I mean, this is a great breakfast food. It's a great lunch food. It's a great dinner food. I mean, whatever you want. It's full of fiber, phytonutrients, antioxidants. I mean, it's delicious. Enjoy it. All right, let's see. Yes. Just like I like them. Enjoy, guys. All right. So that was fun. Let me.
Delicious.
Yeah. So that was, you know, my little take on something really, really quick. Those of you who have worked with me for a long time know that as opposed to saying that you have to eliminate things from your diet, I say you have to include things in your diet. So maximizing your phytonutrient rich foods will really help you out. So that, you know, as you saw, I do eat eggs. I don't eat a ton of them. I eat them sometimes, but what do I combine them with? I combine them with all the other healthy, you know, rich foods that that make us healthy human beings. So hopefully this was a little bit of an educational piece for you guys, and I'd love to hear if you have any questions, anything that I can help with.
Do you have that recipe written down anywhere?
I will. I'll share, okay. I'll share it in the group chat.
I should have been taking notes. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I realized I'm like, you know, I probably need to. I'll probably send
it. Look good.
Chat. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. And what's funny with my recipes is,
Uh-huh.
as you notice, it's like
Yep. Yeah. I like that.
some of that.
I love, yes, perfect. And I took a screenshot of the tempeh that you use.
Yes.
Because,
And it's
yeah.
available readily in any, like I got that from Safeway.
Okay.
They sell that
Great.
in any supermarket.
Okay,
Thank you.
Now, anybody have any questions about, I know some people sometimes have questions about protein powders or, like what type is the best, or any issues with that, or any questions?
Well, I could ask you if the one I use is okay to use. It's called Plant Fusion Complete Protein, and I get the one that has no stevia in it.
Okay. It depends on, I guess, the ingredients. So if you look at the ingredients and it's things you recognize, like pumpkin or chia or hemp, that's great. If it's things like, monodisac for, dilauryl, you're like, I don't know what that is. It's like some kind of chemical. Then I would recommend that you don't. So if it's crushed up seeds and nuts and everything, then I think that's great. And the more variety, the better. So there's one that I use, well, rarely. It's been sitting in my pantry for months, but it's I think called Ancient Nutrition, and it has a lot of it's a plant-based protein that has a lot of different seeds and nuts and things like that. So so those are the kind that I do recommend. A lot of people will talk about whey protein. Whey protein is a very fast absorbing protein, and so a lot of athletes tend to want that type right after an exercise. They've just finished something, and they want to replenish with protein, and so they'll do whey protein. I again think that keeping only one type of protein, or like isolating yourself to something like that, is not ideal. Let's diversify our diet, which allows our microbiome to thrive and to have a lot of different options. So again, it's whatever you can maximize in terms of diversity is important. So that's what I think about those protein powders.
We're putting like the amount of spinach that you just did in that dish into a smoothie. We're getting enough protein and we don't need to add protein powder. So just using the foods, right?
So 100 calories, you'd have to figure out exactly how much. I haven't done the math to see exactly how much, so if it's 100 calories, it gives you 12 grams. Then what else are you putting in your smoothie? So
got it. Okay.
For example, I like soy milk in my smoothies, but I also add some chia seeds. I add flaxseed meal. I'll add, of course, all my fruits. And so the combination of all those things together, and then I'll routinely have my smoothie, and then I'll grab a handful of pumpkin seeds, or I'll grab a handful of nuts, right? So it's not basically the combination of those things will give you what you need for that.
Got it.
It'll give you the 20 grams. And if you notice, when you cook the spinach, now you can get more in a smaller amount, right? So you get that giant package cooks down to this tiny little serving, and it's easier. If you ever stuck and you're like, I don't know what to eat, you can actually just cook down spinach with some olive oil and do a little sea salt, a little red wine vinegar over it, and it's really delicious.
Sounds good. I love spinach.
So
Okay, thank you.
lots of options. You're welcome. Beans, lentils, legumes, super healthful. They have great fiber. So those are great ways to add protein. And for the pasta lovers, okay, in med school I used to eat spaghetti every single day. It was cheap and it was easy to make. But over time, for me, I noticed too much gluten was not doing a good thing. So they have some pretty good like lentil pastas out there, and a soy. I like a soy bean. It's like edamame mung bean fettuccine. It's available on Amazon, and it is just 2 ingredients. It's edamame, which is the soybean, and mung bean. It's 2 beans, and it tastes so good. And it's a really good way to add protein again to your meals.
Okay.
Anything else before we wrap up? No?
I just had a quick question about the 12-week program. I know I started a little late. Would my 12 weeks, I guess, start today, or would I have just I just have to catch up with all the other information?
No, we'll start when we have our first meeting. This
Okay.
is all 12 weeks. I always tell people, I'm 12 weeks means it pushes out. You all know, everybody else knows. So it ends up pushing out to many more weeks than that usually.
Okay.
So yeah, no, we'll start when we have our first meeting. This is
Okay.
this is like a little bonus.
Okay, introduction.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
All right. Well, have a great night, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Happy.
Take care.
Thank you.
Happy eating.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.